JJ Virgin, the woman, the myth, the legend. I'm proud to call you my mentor, colleague. I mean, you've helped me tremendously. So I just feel blessed to have you on as a guest. And you've done so much. I mean, you are so well known in this nutrition space. Your work is pretty much unprecedented, and you still look like you're 30. So I can't even believe that you have published multiple books. You've helped multiple people. You've been on TV. Now you're helping business owners. So you've just done a tremendous amount. And really, I mean, how you look speaks to how you take care of yourself. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, as you get older, you're like doubling down even more in nutrition.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Boy, is it one of the great. Yeah, it is fun now because, in your 20s and 30s, you see friends that are like, I remember one gal, she smoked and lived on candy, and she was like gorgeous and a little skinny waif. I'm like, this is not fair. And then you start getting into your 40s and it's like it all evens out. Right?
It all evens out. Yep.
So, that's what I feel like now. It's like, boy, 40 plus, I'd argue even into your 30s, you better be focusing on this or you are just going down a rapid aging train. Hard to get off of, but you can.
Yeah, you can have, I mean, it's never too late to reverse it or to take control of your health. But if you start early, because just like we were talking about off camera, so many women, especially in their 40s and 50s, really hold on to the message of hormone replacement, and even my audience, thyroid replacement. And while that's important, I think we're getting too far away from the basics.
Yeah, you can't, here's the thing. Like I'm a big fan of hormone replacement therapy. I am on thyroid replacement because that went sideways in my 40s. Mm-hmm. And I'm on estradiol and testosterone and progesterone. However, what you want to do is use those once you've gotten yourself as healthy as humanly possible with the baselines, right? You don't just go do like an abusive lifestyle of eating processed foods and not working out and getting stressed out and stealing from sleep. And then I'll just hormone it. Do it with more. No, that doesn't work. You can't skip the basics. And I know everyone loves to biohack, but when you get to biohack, when you've done everything, all the foundational stuff correctly, now it's just the little bit at the it's like the sprinkles, not even the frosting on the cake. It's the sprinkles on the cake. So first we have to bake the cake, then hormones are frosting the cake. And then once you get past that, throw some sprinkles on. But we got to the cake seems to get overlooked, which is amazing to me, right? It's like people going and wanting all this, I'm going to do laser and fillers and get great skincare creams, and they're eating sugar.
Yeah.
And they're not eating enough protein and they're not working out. It's like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get back to the basics. Well, the Virgin diet, I mean, you've written multiple books, but I really want to focus on the Virgin diet because it is timeless. It's a fantastic message. It's been out 11 years. It's hard to believe. And the message is drop 7 foods, lose 7 pounds in 7 days, which sounds way too good to be true, but you've done this with multiple clients. So it absolutely works. It works. And the premise is to remove certain foods so that your body can do a whole bunch of the things that it should be doing, which we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. It's interesting. So we're actually coming out with the new improved Virgin diet because a lot of things have come out in the research since then, and also a lot of more product options have come out. Now, what I don't want people to do, I remember when I first started playing in the world of gluten-free, mainly because I had clients coming to me and I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on, and I was like, well, why don't we try pulling gluten? Magic happened. But back then they'd come in and they go, I found gluten-free cupcakes and cookies. And I'm like, no. That's not gluten-free are the things at the supermarket that don't have a label. Those are the gluten-free I want you to get. The avocado, I don't want you to go get the gluten-free cupcake. So I think it's important as I'm going into the next stage with Swap to Drop, which is Virgin Diet 2.0, is it isn't, oh, now we have all these great, fabulous, gluten-free products that you can dig into. No, it's just really getting into more of, did some of the Virgin diet work because we were getting away from all these, I call them dirty processed foods? Mm-hmm. Could be some of that, was it really making you just become more aware and making sure you're getting the protein in that you need to do? Could be some of that as well, right? So But I do think it's important. And what's interesting, Amy, is that line of drop 7 foods, lose 7 pounds, just 7 days. I don't know that you could have that on a book title nowadays. They'd be like, no. But the reality is I've had people lose 12 pounds
right
in a week. And then I've had people lose 2 pounds. And to me, it's really about taking 21 days, because it's 7's the first start, and pulling out foods that could be creating inflammation in your diet, in your body, and then letting your body have a chance to just breathe, cool down, and de-inflame. I don't think that's a word. And then looking at the end of those 21 days when you've swapped, and that's why the new book, Swap to Drop, it's not just pulling out those 7 foods. It's more importantly, what are the foods you're putting in their place that are going to help heal you? And then looking at 21 days and going, okay, I've established a new baseline. Because I think that for most people, they don't know what feeling good feels like. They don't know what it feels like to not have to need coffee at 3 p.m. They don't know what it feels like to not try to knock yourself out with a glass of wine. You know, it's like all these things that we accept as normal, using, like, you go to the drugstore and all of the things they have for gut problems, all the pain medications, and, you know, diarrhea and constipation and bloating and all this stuff. You know, what would it be like if you actually didn't have to use any of those things? And that's where we want to get you, is that baseline. And really what the Virgin diet does that I think is revolutionary is it's not a diet. And people will come up to me and they'll go, I've been on this for 10 years. I go, but it's not a 10-year program. It's actually 3 weeks and then a discovery process to figure out which foods work for you and which foods don't.
right
So that you, and the reality is you should do that once a year, because gut permeability, you can get leaky gut at any point. But it's really an idea that we should carry into everything. Diets are tools. They're not absolutes, and they're not religion.
I like that.
Crazy for saying that, you know. And I always say that because I just had to speak at an event where I had a lot of vegans at the event, and I'm like, listen, I'm going to give you science.
Yep.
I'm not going to talk religion. This is what's out there. You make the decisions that are right for you. But like, we get people in here warring, like in the nutrition industry, and I'm like, geez, let's just look at the research and then make decisions based on that, and then check in on our body and connect the dots to see what works best for us. And the idea that there's one thing that's going to work for everybody is ridiculous. And then you look at a lot of these diet books out there, and I go, all right, since I know a lot of the people that have written the diet books, I always think people write the diet book for them.
Yeah.
And then they become like, you know, this is everybody's book. I'm like, no, it's not, you know, like,
Right.
give that program a try. See what works for you. See what doesn't. Take what works, put it into your everyday eating plan, let go of what didn't work, take that out of your everyday eating plan. Intermittent fasting, which I think is a terrible name, because it should be, we should stop eating 3 hours before bed. We should eat 2 to 3 hours after we wake up in the morning. So we have a restricted feeding window. That's how we should eat. That's pretty clear and established. That shouldn't be considered a diet. That should be considered flossing and brushing your teeth, right?
Life.
You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
we should be eating between a 9 to 12 hour window. We shouldn't be eating 15 hours or more, as Sachin Panda has shown in his circadian clock app, that the 90% of the United States eats 15 hours or more. Like, they get up in the morning, wake up, and just eat till they pass out. That's ridiculous. So there's specific things that I think are fairly absolute for most people, but for the most part, this is all an exploration, and everything that we do, I think, should be an invitation based on what your current goals are, what your lifestyle's like, you know, and then you test this thing out and go, huh. And so that's how I designed the Virgin Diet. It's you as your chief scientist, right, of your body,
Yep.
who's going to test, who's got specific goals. And now you're going to test out to see, all right, so when I go through this, you know, especially when we talk about autoimmune, because we know that especially dairy and gluten and eggs and corn and soy can be triggers here, right? What do I find as I started to do this? Am I starting to feel better? Could I find that if I went through and I pulled these foods out, and yes, I could take a food sensitivity test and that could tell me, but I don't believe it gives you the whole picture like you listening to your body gives you, where you really pull out the foods that tend to have the most potential to create an inflammatory response in your body. And again, a lot of that depends on how permeable your gut is. So you go through the process, you let everything, you clear it all out. You've given yourself at least 3 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks better. And then you one by one test things and see how you feel. Because I don't really care if a test says, oh, you can handle dairy great. If I eat dairy and I break out, I got my answer. I don't know. Right.
Right. Right.
Right.
I love so much about that. So much of what you said, because number one, you're breaking it down into simple terms and you're just saying to people, pull these foods out that, like you said, scientifically, we know cause inflammation in the majority of people. Now, you might luck out and you might be able to bring back, let's say, grass-fed dairy. But if you can't, then you can't. And don't waste your money on an expensive test necessarily, because it may or may not be accurate. The food sensitivity test could be picking up on what you ate yesterday, but
Right.
just do your own self-experimentation and listen to your body. So I love that. You're just breaking it down into just simple terms. That's
Well, and
it.
I also don't think, like, food sensitivity tests, I think have their place, and I think it has to be an IgG4. So it's not going to go, oh, you ate this yesterday. Oh my God. Right. It's going to look at a delayed reaction, something that's been accumulating for months. However, what you first want to do is clear out the most likely culprits and get gluten and fructose and alcohol and pain medications and stress under control, get those things dialed way down, and then give your gut a chance to recover. Because if your gut's inflamed and it's more permeable because of those things, and you go get a food sensitivity test, it's going to be like, whoa, I'm reacting to everything.
Everything.
And you hear it, right? There's nothing I can eat. I'm like, no, this is not helpful data at the moment.
Right. Exactly. And then people freak out.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't eat anything. It says I can only have lamb.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Well, that's what I love, is that you say that people can add it back in, like after 21 days. So you don't get that deer in the headlight look of, do you mean I can never eat dairy again, JJ? It's like, no, wait.
Well, here's the whole thing too. You pull out the classic top high five foods. What are they? Gluten. So gluten doesn't show up on a typical food sensitivity test because it's a different type of response. Wheat would, but gluten intolerance, what about 40% of the population has genetic gluten intolerance. It's like little less than 1% is celiac. But the challenge with gluten is that number one, the challenge with gluten, the first challenge is glyphosate. So that's wreaking havoc. So, that's the bigger challenge with a lot of these foods. It's like, well, which part of the thing is it? Is it the glyphosate or the gluten? But we also know in the United States that we have super gluten by hybridizing it and dwarfing it. So it's got a more concentrated gluten content. And one of the challenges that gluten does is in the gut, it triggers the release of zonulin, and zonulin it makes your gut more permeable. And so, it's just like things like I say, there's different things in your diet that people can use that irritate their gut or make it more permeable. Not helpful, which people are like, oh, but it makes things absorb better. I go, not in the way you want that to happen. So gluten's not going to be good there. And fructose does the same thing, sadly. And fructose, I'm not worried about eating an apple, but I am worried about apple juice concentrate, agave syrup, high fructose corn syrup, all these things that we're getting concentrated, added amounts. No one's having leaky gut because they eat an apple a day, because those pectins are so gut healing and so good for the gut. But you start drinking apple juice every day, totally different story. Apple juice is worse for you than a soda. And every time I say that, it's like I said, and there's no Santa Claus and the earth is flat and all these horrible things, it's like, and I don't like your mom, it's like, it's just the way it is, apple juice is higher in fructose than a soda. And fructose is very problematic in terms of aging. It's the most aging sugar we have. So first thing you got to do is just go, all right, we're going to pull out gluten, dairy, eggs, corn, soy, peanuts, which I started pulling those 6 out. And I didn't pull sugar and artificial sweeteners out at first, because while sugar is disrupting the gut microbiome, messing things up and creating an environment for all of these food intolerances to happen, it wasn't creating the actual response. So at first I was like, I'm going to just pull out gluten, dairy, eggs, corn, soy, peanuts, because when I looked at food sensitivity tests, eggs and dairy were always at the top, then corn, soy, peanuts were next. And again, gluten was a different test, but we know what gluten does. what I discovered, Amy, is that if you don't pull out sugar, you know what people do when you pull out those other things?
They replace it with sugar.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Who would have thought? So, and then you really look at sugar and you go, okay, you look at what artificial sweeteners can do to the gut microbiome in terms of making you more glucose intolerant. You look at fructose and what it can do to the gut permeability. And then you look at just sugar in general. And it's like, this is no place here. It's not helpful.
Right.
So that's why it's part of those 7. And the reality is too, when you pull out these things for 21 days, it makes eating processed foods pretty much impossible because they all have some of those.
Yep.
So all of a sudden we're getting rid of the damaged seed oils. So those are going bye-bye. I'm amazed at how many health foods posing on the shelves of Whole Foods, by the way, total aside, have canola oil in them. What is that about? What is that about? Like it's just, you know, here they are like, we're not going to have any GMOs. I'm like, you have canola oil in there. You do. Right. Okay. So anyway, an aside. But I think a lot of what happens when you pull those things out is you get rid of a lot of these dirty processed foods and you start to really focus on, all right, I'm going to start protein first. And I'm going to make sure I'm eating clean proteins that will heal my gut. I'm going to swap in some great non-starchy vegetables with colors that are going to give the polyphenols that my microbiome need to be healthy. I'll make sure that I'm getting healthy fats that reduce inflammation. Like all of a sudden you do these things and you start to pay attention to your symptoms. Because I always start people with the virgin diet and I go, okay, let's look first at symptoms: gas and bloating, joint pain, headaches, fatigue, cravings, inability to lose weight, skin issues, acne, rashes, stuff you wouldn't necessarily connect to your diet,
right?
Until you start to connect to your diet. And then you're like, the light bulb goes off and you're like, oh, wow. Right.
There it is.
Yeah. The throat clearing, the dark circles, the dry eyes, the itchy ears. So we look at all that stuff and we start to do it week by week. And I think it's super empowering to change the conversation around food. You know, we have food as I believe there are some absolutes in food. Like, I think they're just things we should not eat. Yeah. I think artificial sweeteners are one of them. I know that there are people out there that think they're fine. I don't. And artificial sweeteners, I don't mean allulose and monk fruit. Those are not artificial. Those are natural.
Right.
But
the pink, the yellow, the blue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pink,
yeah. Those. Yeah. The pink, the yellow, the blue, they shouldn't be in there. You know, I don't understand how margarine ever made it on a shelf, like, or butter buds or some of these weird things. Like, they just have no place in our diet. But beyond that, when you go through this process, feel what feeling good really feels like, realize that a lot of the things that you've been masking with medications or, you know, alcohol, coffee, or sugar actually are just a food reaction. And you start to feel like feeling good. And then you can connect the dots and go, when I eat this food, I feel this way. The conversation isn't, oh, I think I'll have a cheat meal. Right? Because you know what it does to you. So it's like, and you've already found great replacements. Like, I like to swap. I'm not going to say, you know what, I'm going to swap that burger for some broccoli sprouts. No, that would be stupid. No one's going along with that. But I could swap the regular, you know, fast food burger, corn-fed garbage thing. I could totally swap that for a grass-fed, grass-finished burger with maybe some sauteed mushrooms and onions wrapped in butter lettuce with the little Dijon mustard.
Oh, yeah.
Yum. Like, who would want that, right? Right.
Exactly.
So, you know, there's simple things you can do, swaps that you probably like better. And then all of a sudden you notice how you're feeling, and all of a sudden weight's coming off and your joints don't ache. And you're like, why would you want to go back and have a cheat day? Mm-hmm. It just doesn't make any sense, especially when you know that a cheat day doesn't end there. Right. Because, and this is why these cheat days make me crazy. They're crazy because once you understand food intolerance, it's like you've got a scab that's healing, and then it's almost healed, and you go, you know what, I'm going to just rip that scab off. And now it's bleeding again. Yep. And then you got to start healing again. Right. And it's almost healing. Then you're like, I'm going to rip the scab off. You know, it's like, it's not going to work, you know? And then the minute you rip that scab off, you're like, I just think I'm going to pick at this. I just want more of this. You know, I like, now that I remember, now I remember what that tiramisu tastes like, you know? So why be mean to yourself?
It's a great analogy. It's a fantastic analogy. And all of the symptoms that you just said, from the dry skin to the hair loss to the joint pain can all be correlated back to a thyroid problem too. So maybe if you do this way of eating, if you do this type of elimination diet, do the virgin diet, you might notice that your thyroid improves. And actually, that happened to my assistant. She started off as a patient and she never told me that she had really severe joint pain to where she couldn't even hold a pen.
Wow.
And of course, we start optimizing her thyroid, optimizing her hormones, pulling out the gluten, pulling out the inflammatory foods. She tells me down the road, she goes, I couldn't even hold a pen before, right? Because my joints were so inflamed. I'm like, no,
by the way. Oh, by the way.
Yeah, you didn't even tell me that. So she's thinking, oh, maybe it's rheumatoid arthritis, overuse injury. And then you see these things get better and you're like, oh, wait a minute. That's actually tied back to what I put in my mouth.
Yeah, I remember as I first started doing this, and what happened was I was working with a lab company. I was working with a supplement company, Designs for Health, and a lab company, Metametrics. And I was going around teaching doctors how to use food sensitivity testing in their office. So they would walk in and complain about all those things I just talked about. And we would put them on, we'd have them do the food sensitivity test. And then they'd come back, we'd take them off the foods, and then all these things would disappear. Of course, I had a 3-week wait between the test getting sent in and the test coming back. That's when I started just going, why don't I just hold on? These same foods are showing up. I'll just do this instead. And so I had the chance to see, besides that, and besides taking now, it's like it's about 492,000 people have gone through virgin diet now, to my knowledge. And when I look at all of that, the wild, like things I never would have expected. I had a gal who had, I'm trying to remember, psoriatic arthritis, who put it into remission by going on the virgin diet. I had a gal who was going to physical therapy 3 times a week because of her Achilles tendonitis, went away in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Had been going to the physical therapist for her Achilles tendonitis for a year. Now, if she'd said to me, hey, I'm going to try your program because I want to get rid of this, I would have been like, that's not going to work.
Right.
I would never have expected it. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So shoot, it just tells you we've got to establish a baseline. Like, I love working in weight loss resistance, and people will come to me and go, I can't lose weight. But then I'll look and I'll go, but you've never really dialed in your diet. So you don't actually know. So we have to dial in your diet. We have to get your exercise going, get that muscle mass on, make sure that you've got good sleep and your stress is going. Then we know if you're weight loss resistant.
Right.
Right. But, if you've got all these ultra processed foods going in, you've got some high inflammation going in, creating insulin, like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, I don't think you've got weight loss resistance. I think you just haven't dialed. You don't really realize what your food's doing to you.
Right. And I like how you say too, that you can't just do it a little bit. It's like being like kind of pregnant, right? Because most people don't. One thing that really hit me in the book is when you said most people don't correlate, let's say the wheat whole grain cereal that they're eating in the morning to how they feel later that day or the next day. Everybody thinks it's going to be an immediate reaction. Everybody thinks it's going to be a gut reaction. Well, I don't get bloated. I don't get diarrhea. So therefore that food isn't affecting me, but it is beneath the surface.
Yeah, it could take an hour. It could take a day. And, there's a variety of ways you can look at it. Your blood sugar monitor is going to tell you something. Your scale. I had one person, Amy, who goes, okay, I tested gluten and it didn't do a thing to me. Now my weight went up 3 pounds overnight. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Hello. Unless you ate like 12 loaves of bread, this clearly, it did something to you. Because your weight doesn't jump up 3 pounds overnight because you like ate a piece of pizza, unless you're intolerant to it. And now you're inflamed. So we've got to be able to look at all these different metrics and go, is this working for me or is this not? It's why we really have to know our numbers. I know there's this big push out there that, we got to get off the scale. I think that is a big mistake. And I'll tell you
brought that up. Yeah.
35 years ago, 40 years ago, back when I was going to people's houses as a trainer, paying my way through grad school, I would take the scale out of their house and I'd only let them weigh in once a week because there was all this stuff about this would create all sorts of like craziness with people. And I would do skin fold calipers on a regular scale. And what I learned pretty quickly is that there was a big disparity. I knew it, I could, between waist measurement, skin folds, and I knew that it had to be visceral fat, but I didn't have any modeling yet. Then bioimpedance scales came into being, and now I could look at a skin fold caliper, pinching an inch. Pinching an inch works for a metabolically healthy person, but the minute you become metabolically unhealthy and you're storing more visceral adipose tissue, that deep stuff you can't pinch, it becomes completely wrong. And you'll find people that can't pinch anything and they've got a lot of visceral adipose tissue. So I think we've got to retire pinch an inch and almost go like, if you can't pinch an inch, we've got a problem, right? So I started reevaluating all this information. First of all, people who weigh themselves daily tend to maintain their weight better. Now, I think we really have to trash our scale and get a bioimpedance scale and compare it twice a year to a DEXA scan, because we've really got to know what that weight's made up of, because someone could be 150 pounds. Like I'm a 150-pound female. Now, here's what's interesting. I've been 150 pounds pretty much my whole life. And I did a DEXA scan. I did all the bioimpedance and underwater weighing and everything else in doctoral school one semester. And it was when I was a vegan and doing tons of cardio. I was 25% body fat.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
I was in my 20s. Now, then at 39, when I'd switched over to being omnivore, focusing on protein, doing lots of resistance training, I was 13% body fat. At 59, 14% body fat. And so what we have to do is, we have to know what that scale's made up of, because I'll have people say, oh, I'm the same weight I was in high school. I go, but unless you've been actively putting on muscle, if you're over the age of 40, you're not the same body. You're a fluffier version of yourself. And so we've got to know what on our body is muscle, what on our body is fat, and using a bioimpedance scales, one of those metrics, just like a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, can be great too, monitoring your sleep, because you'll really start to see, is my food working for me? Is what's happening with stress and sleep and all of these things? And, diet just happens to be one metric that's really easy to change. I'd say simple to change, not easy. It's really simple to change.
Simple to change. Not necessarily easy.
No,
You're going to get
it's going to be hard, but it's like what I heard a great lecture and he used this and I went, this is so good. Okay. So we know that probably the simplest metric to change would be diet. Changing when you eat, what you eat can make a big difference. It's hard though. It's hard if you've gotten used to every morning you go to Starbucks, you get your healthy morning muffin, which is more sugar than 2 Hostess cupcakes, and you have your little skinny latte. It's skinny after all, but it's all non-fat milk sugar, which is totally jacking your blood sugar. So it's going to be hard to go, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make a loaded protein smoothie at home. But it's also hard to have to then start checking your blood sugar throughout the day, going on diabetes medication, right? And right. So there's 2 hards. You just have to pick your hard. I pick switching over to the protein shake personally.
Yeah. All day. Because it tastes just as good too. So,
so you just get to choose your hard. All these things, like, yes, working out is hard. It should be hard. That's the point of working out. It's got to be hard because you got to do more than what you're used to. So your body will continue to improve. If you do the same as what you're used to, your body doesn't have to change. So it has to be something you can't normally do. And it's hard. And people go, that's hard. I don't want to do that. It hurts, blah, blah, blah. And I go, well, what's really hard, having worked with people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, is when you can't get off the couch. Right. And you got to get someone to pull you up. That's hard. Yeah. So I don't know, pick your hard there.
Pick your hard. I like that. That could be a big saying that we put on the wall, right? Pick your hard, because it's every day. Every day you have to get up and make a choice, this or that, and you have to pick your hard. And I'm glad you brought up the scale too, because actually ever since I was on your podcast and we talked about this, I've been weighing myself every day, because you're right. There are those fluctuations that you can absolutely see. Let's say when you do kind of go off the rails, like I did this weekend, I saw the scale go up 3 pounds. And just like you said, that's not a normal 3, that's definitely an inflammatory.
You didn't eat 3 pounds worth of food.
100%. Right. Exactly. So I'm a fan of that. What is your thought about tracking your macros, like tracking calories, tracking protein, tracking the carbs?
Well, since we know that the average person grossly underestimates what they eat, I think all of these things are helpful. In fact, I just pulled out a food scale this morning because I was doing something. I go, I just want to see how many ounces this is, because I was eating some sliced turkey and I go, I don't have any concept here of how much this one is. So I'm just going to get you. So I'm always trying to figure out, so I'm aware of how much something is, because I still remember I had a client who was so frustrated with her weight, and I had her at the gym 5 times a week. And I'm like, all right, we were digging into what could it possibly be. She's reporting what she's eating. And then I go over to her house for dinner. Now, I'm over at her house for dinner and she's cooking. And I am watching her as she's cooking. She is putting everything as she's cooking into her mouth. Like everything. I was like, I was horrified, because I was like, you've eaten basically more than you would want to eat for dinner before you even ate dinner. Like you just ate it all before you got here, which I think a lot of moms do when they're making dinners and lunches. It's easy stuff to do, right? So I think it's super important to do these things so that you can get really clear on how much you're really eating. Like when you look at it and go, okay, I'm going to eat, my recommendations are like around 0.8 grams per pound of your goal body weight. So let's say that's, let's say that's 90 grams of protein a day. So we're dividing that into 30, 30, 30, 30. I want to track that to make sure you're getting it. Right.
Yep.
Then I'm always tracking, like the things that I watch the most in my diet, I watch to make sure I'm getting the protein I need. And then I track vegetables and fluid intake, because I think that if we lead with protein first, because it's more thermic, and, if you've got 10 to 15% of your overall metabolism is digestion, and we can boost it a little bit, like protein's 20 to 30% more thermic. Is that going to make a massive difference? It'll make a little. I'm going to take every single thing. I want every advantage.
100%.
Every single one, right? So we've got that. And I know that if I lead with protein, it's more satiating. And so then if I then put with it non-starchy vegetables, so I've got protein and fiber, which slow down stomach emptying, ghrelin suppressed, I'm going to not feel hungry as quickly. Protein takes longer to digest. And I'm getting, protein and vegetables are my 2 non-negotiables. Like I want people to get non-starchy vegetables for all of the polyphenols that feed the gut microbiome and the fiber. So that's where I always start, because I want to make sure you get those in. Then I'll go past that. Usually you've gotten healthy fats between those 2 things. Most people don't need to add more. Right. And I don't find most women, like, we still have to watch total calories. Right. You can lose it quickly with fats.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, it's really easy to go, oops, just a little extra olive oil and some nuts and boof,
And then it's gone. Yeah. Just
right.
Like that.
And it's like overloaded. And it might be healthy, but too much healthy food isn't healthy, because your body has to put it somewhere. And ideally you've built muscle, so you've got a sponge for the sugar, and you can store those extra carbs in your muscle for energy. And maybe you have a little space in your liver, but liver doesn't have that much space. And so after that, if you've got too much, and the protein hopefully is going towards amino acids, there's all this controversy with protein, as with like how much. And I remember someone pinged me, Amy, and they go, my manicurist, I kid you not, my manicurist told me that you can only absorb 27 grams of protein at a sitting.
27. Don't know where she came up with that, but okay.
27, whether you're a man, a woman, like, I was like, can't you even like look at the silliness of that statement? Right. Yes, there is a rate limit. Do we really know? No one, I've yet to hear how much it really is. I think everybody's kind of like, if I had to go a little over, I'd rather go over than under, because you can use protein for energy if you need to. But if you look at that and build that way, then, it's interesting. If you really make sure that you're getting your non-starchy vegetables, I think we need at least 5 servings a day, more better. And your protein, then you'll see and you've got some healthy fats in your protein. You probably used a little bit of healthy fats in your vegetables. Then you'll see what else you actually even need.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, exactly. So, I'm glad you touched on the protein too, because I'm always talking about that. And I'm sure you see this or saw this with your clients when you were working one-on-one. I'll pull up a woman's food journal. And the other day I counted maybe 20 grams in a day
Oh
in
my
a
gosh.
day. Yes. I mean, it's horrible. Now that's an extreme. I would say most women are coming in like around the 50 to 60 gram
That's what
mark.
the averages show, is that women are getting 40 to 60 grams of protein a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's
That
really
ain't going to cut
way
it.
too low. It's
No.
way too low. And then you wonder why your hair is falling out and it's thin and why you feel like you're losing muscle and you're losing strength and you don't even want to go work out. I mean, it's coming back to protein and your energy is low.
Yeah.
Hello, protein and inflammatory foods. Boom. You increase your protein, you take out the inflammatory foods, you're going to feel tremendously better in a short amount of time.
Yeah. In a very short amount of time. And that's what's amazing. Like in a week.
Yeah.
In a week.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that's what's important, because for most of us, we have been on a diet. We've been on 2. We've probably been on 10.
Mm-hmm.
And for most of us, we go on, and I'll tell you, the first couple of days of pulling foods that you're intolerant to out, the way that our body reacts to a lot of food intolerances is that it's created these antibodies. So as you, and immune complexes. So as you first don't feed the beast, it's like, where is that? And you'll start to crave the foods that are hurting you, which I always say is awesome, because you're going to have a great impact. But once you get past 3 to 4 days, you're through it. And I think for so many of us, we've tried these programs, and, 7 days in, we're like, okay, I still hate this and I feel like crap.
Right.
Yet if you can do something where you go, okay, wow, I notice a huge difference. And now I just need to go, what do I need to do to continue this? Right? Which things should I have? Which things shouldn't I have? And what are the hallmarks of a healthy eating plan for me? And I wish that there was a word for healthy eating plan and a word for diet, because I think we get them all bungled up.
Yeah.
I really think that the way we need to look at diets is, okay, these are the problems I'm trying to solve for. And what's something that's been shown to be therapeutic to affect that? And then let me test that and see what works in my body.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I know we would always say in the nutrition fitness space, clean eating, clean. Well, these days, what the hell is clean eating?
I don't know.
You know? I mean, so you're getting a chicken from Walmart. Okay, it's protein, but it's loaded down with hormones and chemicals and God knows what else. So yeah, we do need it. We do need a new word.
I think clean eating just means you left the United States. And
yeah,
that's all I can figure.
You're in Italy having some gluten.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And you're eating, but it's clean. Yeah.
Exactly.
Sadly enough.
So I want to dive into, before I let you go too, I want to dive into soy, because I have not yet. I talk a lot about gluten and its effect with the thyroid, that it's a basically molecular mimicker to the thyroid, and you're going to get that autoimmune flare. But the interesting thing about soy, obviously in the thyroid space, we tell people to avoid it. But I want to get the why behind it, because it can actually affect your hormones. It can affect fertility. It can affect the sex organs of babies and their nervous system if the mother eats it while pregnant. So can you expand on soy and what you found?
Gosh, soy is another one that's so conflicting. And I was looking at Kayla. I don't know if you've ever read any of Kayla Daniels' work. Who wrote, I think her book was There Is No Joy in Soy, who really just went through and unpacked soy. And when I first started looking at soy, it was because I got to go to a little event with Loren Cordain. Do you know who he is?
Oh yeah, he's the OG of the
He's the OG
diet.
of paleo. Okay, yeah. So I was in a little thing. This was like 22 years ago, maybe 23 years ago, probably 23 years ago. I'm in a little conference room in Las Vegas. There are 8 of us and Loren Cordain. And it was like my world just got rocked listening to all of this Paleolithic principles and how he was turning around autoimmune disease by taking out cereal grains and soy and legumes. Like, now I got to tell you, I think legumes can have a place in the diet. But if someone's really got autoimmune stuff going on, I think, and this was what my mentor back then taught me, is the sicker you are, the farther back in your ancestry you want to go. And the whole premise behind paleo is that, like, let's eat what we were eating 5,000 to 10,000 years ago. Now, I think a lot of the triggers to the problems we have happened in the last 70 years, 1950s on up, and especially in the last 20 to 30 years, because we have all the pesticides, toxins, ultra processed foods, bad oils, industrial oils, and sugars. But you look back and you start to see a lot of these triggers. And so I think the autoimmune paleo diet protocol has a really, it has a definite place here to just test out and see what happens when you pull all these foods out. One of the key ones is soy. So as I started to dig into it, soy was used in Asian countries to remineralize, to get nitrogen back in the soil. Then they discovered if they heavily fermented it, massively, they could get rid of the anti-nutrients and use it as as a protein source, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the key thing here was heavily fermented to get rid of the phytates, the lectins, the trypsin inhibitors, all the different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But still, when you look at a lot of the research pulling it out, there's some research showing that it can be helpful with, potentially in the estrogen part of things for women.
Right.
But there's also all of the information about like young boys developing quickly, young girls, or not developing, young girls developing quickly, men having lower brain volumes. I certainly, unless I was I remember I was working with this group of athletes that were working to become the next heavyweight champ of the world. I did a lot of consulting in the heavyweight boxing world.
Nice.
I
That's
really
exciting.
don't know why.
That's kind of
Anyway,
cool. Yeah.
but somehow they were drinking. So I came they're like, and we want you to teach them nutrition. I go, really? Do we need to teach them, or why don't we just give them what they should be doing? And I'll explain why, but you can imagine a bunch of like 18 to 22-year-old guys. I was like in my 40s, and I was like, okay, kids,
Right.
I know, but we're going to actually do something important here. But they were drinking soy milk, and I'm like, do you want man boobs? Like, this is the worst possible thing you could be doing. It's going to drop your testosterone. So, I think we've got to look at these things and go, what are some of the issues here? The goitrogens. When I was on Dr. Phil, we had 2 of our weight loss challengers who were vegetarians, who were living on soy. And I'm like, one of them's thyroid stimulating hormone was like, it was like 4.8, and the doctor would not give her any hormones because it was in the range. And I'm like, right. And I couldn't help her because she wouldn't stop the soy, and I still think of those 2 gals because they lost. They were like 2 of the ones that totally just they were losers in the group, like not in a good way. But you look at soy, and we know that it can lower thyroid function. We know it's got the goitrogens. It's like questionable about the whole thing with hormones for men, for young girls, for young boys. Mm-hmm. And it's new to our food supply. So I know there's some positives in some of those phytoestrogens, but I also look at that and go, other places we could be getting those.
Exactly.
Don't have some of these potential issues. So, because it turns out there's a lot of foods that have phytoestrogens in them. So there must be a reason nature put those in. So I still don't think soy is a good option, especially for people with any kind of thyroid issues. And, we have I don't know why you'd need to use it. We've got coconut aminos for soy sauce. And where else would you have to use it?
Right. Yeah. Why add in the tofu? Why add in the edamame? There are so many other.
Well, edamame especially is very problematic because think about it. It's not fermented. Mm-hmm. So the worst possible thing you could do is eat edamame.
And restaurants are serving it up as an appetizer with all kinds of
yeah. I mean, I lived in Japan. I was, but here's the crazy thing about living in Japan. So I lived in Japan. I helped bring aerobics to Japan way back when. And you didn't know that, like weird little things that I've done in life. So when I lived there, I can tell you that what we think the Japanese diet is and what the Japanese diet is are very different things. Okay. And they the only time I ate tofu was their little miso soup, had a couple tiny pieces. And then I'd eat what they call poured man sushi, which was a tofu wrap. It was super thin. It was mainly sugar, I look at back then. But their diet was seaweed, fish, rice, and salad. That's what little vegetables in very small amounts. I'd have to order 3 dinners. It was very small amounts of food.
Okay.
teaching aerobics 5 hours a day. So it wasn't what people think of all this. Like, I never once saw soy milk in Japan. I didn't see soy hot dogs, soy ice cream, soy cheese, soy yogurt, soy kefir, none of these weird processed foods. Like, if you want to talk about an ultra processed food, look at soy, like anything soy, these soy ice creams and soy cheeses and soy with, and generally they'll have bad oils in them, and they're just gucky and they taste icky too. Yuck. You know, so I know that soy can be good because it's got more, you know, it's got all the amino acids, blah, blah. But, you know, I'm sorry, I don't see it if you've got a thyroid. I don't see it as a woman.
Right.
Or,
No.
and I definitely don't see it as a man, and I don't see it using for a kid. So I don't see it.
Yeah.
How's that?
not even necessary in our diet. Just take it out, eliminate it, done.
Yeah.
Okay, JJ, last question. I lied before I let you go. Last question. Insulin resistance, because I see it a ton with my patient population. If the thyroid is off, you're going to have dysregulated insulin. And the interesting thing, again, coming back to the Virgin Diet book, is a lot of these foods that we could call, I guess, healthy. I mean, there's that clean, healthy, whatever we're going to call it, right? Mm-hmm. Those foods alone, if they are affecting your gut, coming back, increasing the zonulin, increasing the permeability, can actually cause insulin resistance. So you could technically be on a low carb diet of sorts, be eating some of these foods that you really should be taking out, and still, you're still insulin resistant. You're still having that response to your blood sugar.
So I think this is where a continuous glucose monitor is just like the greatest tool. Like, I just think these are such great tools. And, you know, I don't know if I told you the story. So I'm wearing this continuous glucose monitor from NutriSense, and we post something on social about it. And I guess the hashtags the team used was like something around diabetes. And I got like they're like this total attack. Now my team's like, oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah, you know, and here was why I was being attacked. Okay. Type 1 diabetics were like, you're taking away our continuous glucose monitors, then we won't have them. I'm like, I can totally understand if there was a shortage of continuous glucose monitors. However, there's not a shortage of them. There's more than we need. And what we do have is we sit here and talk about a pandemic. We have a pandemic epidemic of metabolic health problems. I mean, it is so ridiculous. And gosh, if all you did was start measuring your muscle mass and improving that, measuring your sleep and improving that, measuring your blood sugar and improving that, we would not have metabolic health problems. They would be gone. And so, you know, we need to really use a continuous glucose monitor, because it can really tell you, like, is this food working for me? You can overload on protein and hijack your blood sugar, right? It's going to increase insulin. It's not a safe, free food. Like, nothing's a free food. You can't drink as much celery juice as you want, God forbid. You know, you just like, you know, you can't eat all the broccoli. There's nothing. We need to eat everything in balance. And that's where I think you really need to look at this in a whole picture, because you could be eating correctly and you could be exercising, but if you're not sleeping well, you can start to become insulin resistant. Right. You could be, you know, doing loads of walking, but no muscle maintaining, and start to have some issues with blood sugar and insulin because of your stress. So there's all sorts of things that contribute to insulin resistance. And it is just the metric. I wish we had, and apparently it might be coming, the blood sugar. I think it's because we can't get the sensor. It's not into the blood, but I would certainly love to see if we could look at blood sugar and insulin in real time. Then we would, could you imagine? Because what we start to look at is, we'll look at your fasting blood sugar, hemoglobin A1C, which is your blood sugar over the last couple months, and a fasting insulin. But what we really want to see is them, the minute one's a little off, now we've got some dysregulation. They should be playing together. And ideally insulin's 2 to 5, you know, fasting, and your hemoglobin A1C is 5 or under. And I'll tell you, until I started wearing a CGM, I could never get my hemoglobin A1C 5 or under.
Oh, interesting.
Never.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the information I needed to really connect the dots between what I was eating and things. It was funny. I was just talking to David Perlmutter about this, and he goes, it is wild. Cashews hijack my blood sugar.
Oh, bummer. I like cashew.
I know, right?
Yeah. Damn it.
I know. You're like, oh, I feel for you. But, it really helps you go, these things work and these things cause a spike. Like I'm going up more than the 20 to 40 points I should because of this. I ate kiwi, my blood sugar hijacked to 180. I did the fasting mimicking diet. My blood sugar went to 225.
Yep.
225.
Yep.
I was like, holy smokes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
No, it is very interesting because when I was wearing mine, I poo-pooed it forever, very similar to you. I have a dark chocolate addiction. So I did not want the CGM to tell me that my dark chocolate was spiking my sugar, but I caved, I wore it. The interesting thing was keto foods. So like keto cereals that are packaged and you can buy it at the grocery store, and an artificial sweetener. So you mentioned about stopping by Starbucks. I just, I wanted to treat myself. So I got an almond milk latte with 2 pumps of sugar-free vanilla. I went to 200. That was it. Yep.
Well, and also like those artificial sweeteners can still kick insulin too. And, that almond milk at Starbucks has got a bunch of sugar in it too.
Sugar. Yeah. Yeah. It was not the unsweetened. It was not the unsweetened.
Yeah. Because they don't have it.
Right.
It's just like if you go over to Starbucks and you put anything in your drink, you're done.
Yeah.
Because all of their coconut milk and oat milk, and they're like sugar bombs.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Sad. I know. That's why a CGM can be great. Because you're like, okay, I'm out. I get it. I see it. Darn it.
And you have to deal with that data. You gotta face the data and deal with it.
Right. I know. But then you can do something about it. So you don't wear a CGM for the rest of your life here. You wear a CGM to get your habits dialed. And then if you feel like you're going off, like I wear them when I'm traveling, just so I can see in real time what the heck's going on.
Yep.
So it helps a ton.
Love it. JJ, this has been awesome. I mean, this is everything that I wanted to deliver to my audience in just a nice, compacted, clear, concise form. So thank you so much for coming on and just imparting your knowledge to everyone. I appreciate it greatly.
My pleasure.
I really do. Anything that you have coming up? I know the book, the 2.0, Virgin Diet 2.0. Anything else in the pipeline? You're doing so much all the time.
Yeah, that's we've been doing all sorts of little metabolism, like different rescue guides. That's what we're working on right now, or just simple. I like to take the science, synthesize it, put into simple action steps. So based on what you're working on, you've got a plan that you can do, because I think that's really important. And I think that's the most important message for everybody is like, you're not going to fix it all overnight. Just pick the thing that you need to focus on the thing, dial in the thing, then go to the next thing, right? So maybe right now it's a CGM, and then next you're going to go do your DEXA and start really focusing on improving muscle mass, just one thing by one thing, right?
Yep.
And prioritize, obviously, like thyroid takes precedence over a whole lot of other stuff.
Right. Yeah, get that online, but do it all at once. Don't just do the thyroid medication. Do all the things together so you can actually get rewarded for your efforts.
I honestly don't think people should get thyroid medication unless they consent to really following the diet, because it's so clear. It's like I wish it could be that way so people would understand the importance of it.
Great. I might have people start signing off on that. Like,
I agree. I promise. But I mean, it's purely because our jobs are to help people get healthy and do the right things. And it's, trying to put just, here you are doing an integrative approach, but if you just take the hormones without doing the rest, you didn't.
Right.
It's a Band-Aid. So there you go.
Thank you, JJ. I appreciate it so much once again.